What's up? It's the weekend in South Africa. It's a Sunday. And yesterday, the Afrikaners, the farmers, went to Pretoria to go and stage a march. It can't be a protest, right? Marches are pro something and protests are against something. Is that how we differentiate them? I don't know. But here's how this video is gonna go today. It's more of a shout out. I won't be doing too much commentary over here. Just wanna now look at the events as they break and as things progress, as we roll down and I bring you coverage of this story. It's important for some of us to start following this. Before I get into the video, just want to say that if you've ever enjoyed politics or you spend any time watching political commentary content from the United States, you'll know that they are so lush and so rich with diverse voices everywhere, bruh. Like, I literally even enjoy listening to the right-wingers and the racists in the United States, bro. Like, their channels, their analysis, because they're not wrong all the time about certain things, you know. And the right-wingers, not only do they give commentary on racial issues, they are conservatives, if you know. So we kind of mix somewhere. They believe in Christ. They claim to, perhaps some of them just culturally or technically, but not Christian in practice. However, because they have some sort of values and morals that I subscribe to, I tend to find myself on their side sometimes versus some other nonsense that I really don't agree with. And the right-wingers are family-orientated people. Family-oriented? I don't know. But here now, the one that we are going to look at here is a right-winger by the name of Willem Petzer. I know him. I met him about 5 or 4 years ago, probably 5 years ago, when I was in my very serious prime as an aggressive activist against white people, as an EFF member who was very passionate about crushing the competition, you know. So Willem Petzer, perhaps if I search him on Twitter, I'll find that he has blocked me because we've had interaction. So, yo, what's up, Willem Petzer? This video over here doesn't have too much commentary, man. I just want to show you that I'm aware. I see you. After some time, man, you done grown, man. I remember when we were 5 years younger. Now I see that you done kept up with the lies, man. They done made you famous, man. Now you're standing on stage, man, and you're giving speeches, man. And let's listen to one of your speeches. Shout out to you, Willem Petzer. Glad to see that you're still alive, man. You have to do what you have to do. As an Afrikaner, you have to say the things that you have to say. All there is for us to do is to listen and watch and observe. Nobody has the powers of God. No one will ever be able to issue out one statement that just sweeps the entire nation and makes things to stand in the way that they'd like them to stand. So there's nothing I say that will really convince the Afrikaner community that the things they believe are lies. And so you're just going to keep believing what you're believing. And I'm just going to keep on following it bit by bit by bit by bit. I've been here for 5 years, man. I know that y'all are highly organized, highly militarized, highly financed, highly resourceful, highly skilled. You've got a media empire there at AfriForum, and as a media person, I admire these things. And as you're standing on stage, as I'm sitting here in front of the mic talking, you and I have some similarities. So shout out to you, Willem Petzer. Here's a video of you in Pretoria yesterday.
On the 15th of February 2025, more than 3,000 people came together in a rally at the Embassy of the United States of America in Pretoria, South Africa, in order to show their support for Donald Trump's actions that he had taken against the South African government's expropriation without compensation, as well as the racial laws against white people. A petition in sign of a memorandum that we gave to the embassy was also accompanying this memorandum, and it was signed by more than 138,000 people. Here is my speech that I gave at the rally attended by more than 3,000 people today. Donald Trump signed his first executive order of his second term, declaring all forms of affirmative action illegal in America. I believe it was the greatest step taken in human rights law worldwide for at least the last 60 years.
you'll know that those who have had a historic advantage hate every law that seeks to let those who are disadvantaged sort of catch up. So perhaps you may look somewhere around the world, maybe you may find some black people who are against affirmative action, and you may not find them because it's pretty much the white people who totally hate any advantage sort of being given to those who are historically without advantage.
I can speak from experience as a man who had experienced this form of discrimination since the day I was born. I was born after the previous government in this country ended, and I've known nothing else but affirmative action. Now we know that affirmative action, expropriation without compensation, and all forms of taking away something from someone just because of the color of their skin falls under the exact same legal philosophy, which is restorative justice. Restorative justice is very ironically named because it is not justice at all. True justice is when you have freedom until you did something wrong. And there's a due process in a court of law where you are found guilty and then you are being punished. Under restorative justice,
wasn't apartheid a crime against humanity? Isn't that some sort of court ruling? I don't think that it is. Was it? Who was it that declared apartheid a crime against humanity? I remember having these facts back when I was really clued up about this whole thing. But there's been definite wrong found about the system of apartheid and the exclusion. So he sounded like an apartheid apologist. This is somebody who sticks to the scriptures no matter what. A perfect example of apologists being Christian apologists. I've believed so much in what the scripture says. I've sought to look for as much proof that gives this, and I'm now able to communicate with somebody. If you wanted to have a conversation about Christ, about the creation, about humanity, about what the Bible says will happen in the future, what about our current crisis, including the scuffles that we are all engaged with right now, you know, the racial divide. These times are told in the Bible. It is told that these are a sign of the end of days. So I then have decided to just engage these issues knowing that they are unstoppable. They've been prophesied to be coming and they will take place. So I'm just being an audience member. You know, I'm riding along on this magnificent ball planet that we are all on, and it's entertaining. That's all I can take it for, man. We'll just see how it all goes forward, etc., etc. He's an apartheid apologist.
it is justified to punish a man or a woman before they were found guilty of anything for alleged crimes that they did not commit, that was allegedly committed maybe even hundreds of years before the day that they were born. This is what we appreciate from what is America doing for the world, ending this madness.
Okay, has America really ended anything? What effects will this really have on South Africa? Like I said earlier, there's no one who can stand up and give a speech, no matter how powerful, even if you're a US president. If you stand there and you say, I'll sanction this, I'll take away your money here and there. Racial tensions and hate between human beings is a spiritual problem. It's a problem of morality, and immorality shall persist until the end of days. So it seems like Willem Petzer here is celebrating the end of a particular era, and him having his president out in the United States, he believes that his president has just made a declaration across all the earth. And so everybody who is currently pursuing restorative justice and affirmative action, black economic empowerment, as we call it in South Africa, he believes that all of this has now been completely put aside. I think you're celebrating way too early, my man. I think you should really prepare yourself to come out on more of these marches. I think commit yourself to this being your life more and more going forward. Your you're going to have to now learn to come out and march on a very regular, because this is all based on fallacy and the world is waking up to your fallacy. Quick cue a video over here of an Al Jazeera coverage of this issue so that you understand that the world is actually awake to what is happening here.
Donald Trump has signed a directive stopping all U.S. foreign aid to South Africa and offered refugee status to Afrikaners, white South Africans, many of whom were complicit in the system of apartheid. Ostensibly, Trump opposes a new law, the Expropriation Act, which gives the ANC-led coalition government the power to expropriate land under certain scenarios, including land owned by Afrikaners. The order also accuses the government of fueling violence against racially disfavored landowners. Trump's talking about white people, farmers. The South African government disputes those arguments, says they're based on misinformation and propaganda. We'll get at that, where that material comes from, and how it has made it onto news channels in the U.S. and beyond. The other angle playing into this story, South Africa also happens to be the country that has taken Israel to the International Court of Justice for genocide.
I actually doubt that Trump knows that much about South Africa or even cares that much about South Africa specifically. This plays into his white voter base. They would probably identify with a mythical white tribe being under threat in Africa under a black government. Geopolitically, it also ties into a rising right-wing populist discourse that draws on fears of blacks, fears of Muslims, fears of immigrants. And this is part of his agenda to punish South Africa for taking Israel to the International Court of Justice, and also part of South Africa's pivoting towards Russia, China, and the BRICS.
We all know that Donald Trump is a kook. He was a kook before. He's now a kook back for the second time in the White House. And so we have no hope at all that racism will ever end and that you guys will stop making your claims and stop mistreating and stop having a supremacist attitude. We have absolutely no expectation of your attitudes and your personalities ending. So don't celebrate the end of affirmative action and those kinds of restorative justice measures. Don't celebrate. Nothing has changed. We are going forward pretty much as a racially divided country, and I'm just admitting it. I wish we could be together somehow, but I know that there's absolutely nothing that will satisfy the Afrikaner community in South Africa to truly be settled and be fine and be happy. You know, there's nothing that can do that. I mean, not even the president's speech can represent all of black people. You know, there will still be people out there who really have a problem with white people. There'll be people who have a spiritual philosophy that takes their minds and keeps it in the past, keeps it in the slavery era. Some even are still talking about apartheid till today, and they will do so if they like. So, Willem Petzer, you're saying there's some kind of victory, but let's just keep going.
We will be handing over a memorandum to President Donald Trump today at the embassy. We are very thankful for Professor Andries Raad from the University of the Free State for compiling this memorandum today in the last 2 weeks for us. Within this memorandum, we will be looking at 3 different topics. The first topic that will be discussed is the ideological history of the ANC. And of course, the South African Communist Party and COSATU, the mine or the unions that ruled this country in the tripartite alliance for the last 31 years. We must not forget that the ANC does not stand alone, that the South African Communist Party has always been the intellectual driving force behind the ANC. Many people do not mention the South African Communist Party, but the documents that rule the ideological direction taken within South Africa were all compiled by the intellectuals at the South African Communist Party. We need to expose these documents, and then we need to show that the ANC and the South African Communist Party alliance still rules this country true to these documents, who are some almost 100 years old.
So note that you're listening to an attack on the Communist Party, which is a very, very small wing branch of the ANC. Those people are truly irrelevant. They may have been very strong or ideologically more rigorous during the apartheid struggle when the ANC perhaps didn't have such strong intellectual. He may be right, etc. But I want to point out to you that Willem Petzer is attacking communism as a whole. South Africa is going towards China, is going towards Russia, is going towards the BRICS countries. And now we are all in the same boat with the Afrikaners. And they know that they are all moving with us towards the Chinese. And the Chinese are communists, and the US and China are not friends because those in the US are capitalists. So this is an ideological war. So he's just, zeroing in on the SACP, but it's a much bigger argument. It's a much bigger ideological battle with communism. And it's a religion that he's against because he believes in the religion of capitalism, the free market, land ownership unfettered, with no government able to seize the land or reprioritize the land for other issues. So it's communism. It's a fight against that. Let's continue.
So in the first chapter of our memorandum, we will be naming these documents coming from many different conferences that the ANC and South African Communist Party had since 1935 with Comintern, the International Communist Society, and how these laws are playing out today, and as well as the references being made to these documents now less than 2 years ago, where the ANC says that it is still committed to what it calls land reform. The most important part that we take from this first chapter is that the communism of the South African Communist Party is not like your traditional Marxist communism. No, it is a racial form of communism. Instead of the poor being benefited at the expense of the rich, as in traditional Marxism, the communism of the ANC is racial in the sense that black people are being so-called benefited at the expense of white people. But at the end of the day, it is just a few elites at the ANC walking away with all of the benefits and all of the cash. It was extremely ironic to me when I was looking at the statements made by high-ranking ANC members when they took Israel to the International Court of Justice in Den Haag.
That's another thing. The West is angry that South Africa dared to step up against Israel and take them to the criminal court, International Criminal Court, to suggest that the bombing of the Muslims in that territory there should stop. So you are hearing some, that's the vampire inside Willem Petzer there. That's the bloodthirsty man who wants bombing to happen and continue. So that's another issue that is being hidden here, but glad he's able to just show it. He's going straight for it. It's communism of the Chinese and the Russians and BRICS that we are against, and we are against South Africa's daring to defend Palestine, Gaza.
Our Minister Naledi Pandor, who was our Minister of Foreign Affairs, made the statement that the Israelis were cutting off the electricity of Gaza on her X account. Thank you, Mr. Musk, for exposing this by giving her a platform. And she didn't even comprehend the irony because she was doing this to her own citizens. And this is what they are saying Israel is doing in a crime against humanity and a genocide.
That is perhaps a joke or cynicism that is palatable to right-wingers. They don't mind somebody making off-whack jokes and juxtaposing things that are not similar at all. So he's comparing the power outages of Eskom to the switching off of electricity by an enemy across a territory who is also bombing you. So he says, the contradiction with the Israel versus Gaza Palestine thing is the electricity thing. What about the bombing? What about the people getting killed? But if you're an apologist, man, you have to be one who stands up no matter what, right?
In the second chapter of the memorandum we'll be handing over, we will be talking about at least, and I'm saying at least because these were the laws we could compile, 118 laws, 118 laws that are wrote specifically to target white people and remove them from the economy or so-called benefit black people, but we do know that they are not being benefited. The most important part that we take from this chapter is that expropriation law as signed this year was not the first expropriation without compensation taking place in South Africa. The expropriation of mineral rights, everyone lost their mineral rights that they had on their properties already. They were promised compensation for these mineral rights, but not a single person that lost their mineral rights had received any compensation as of yet. The same with the expropriation without compensation of water rights. No person in this country has water rights on their property anymore. It's all in the so-called custody of the state. Nobody received any compensation for their water rights being taken away from them. And lastly, and the most important expropriation without compensation we have in this country is black economic empowerment. I would love to drive around in a cyber truck and I would love to have Starlink internet in my home. But why do we not have Starlink? Because if Elon Musk wants to start selling Starlink in South Africa, he needs to allow the state to expropriate 30% of his company in order to do business here and give it to a so-called black person. But as I said again and again during this speech, it's not just a black person, it is an ANC elite that should receive that. Like many other ANC elites that received most of South Africa's mines at the transition after apartheid to the new South Africa. Then in the last chapter of this memorandum, we will be talking about crime and specifically farm murders. Every single South African is a victim of crime within this country. Every single one. We are the rape capital of the world.
Thank you for that fact. Everyone is a victim. You know, broken clocks are correct twice a day. You're not completely wrong at things, man. That's what makes things so complex and difficult for us to debate. You are correct in some things, but then you take the opportunity where you're correct to totally lie. And so, man. And even your truths are not, you're not truthful about things that really matter. Everybody being affected by crime, I give you credit for stating that. But man, if you are then going to continually say that there's farm murders and they are murders sanctioned by the government, meaning the government has sent people out to specifically target Afrikaners. So there's some document somewhere or some people being briefed behind a room, then being deployed to go and commit one particular crime upon a people, which is called farm murders. So that's where your truths really become irrelevant. Your lies are much more pronounced.
One of our cities, which is Cape Town, is within the top 10 cities for murder within the world, even though the other 9 cities in the top 10 are all in active war zones or in South America where drug cartels rule. South Africa is the only one without such problems that does have a city in the top 10 murder rate in the world.
The problem in Cape Town, which is a region ruled by the Democratic Alliance, the police there under the Democratic Alliance, budgets and monies for community development and service delivery are all in the hands of the Democratic Alliance. So Cape Town really should be a different story, given that that is the white capital over there. That is the French Riviera of South Africa. So with so much wealth and prosperity there, I thought that Cape Town would be turned into some kind of utopia. But you can see that even where the white people govern themselves and govern the people nearby, there's absolutely no difference that they make in the lives of the people nearby. So when they find themselves living within that crime and they now go and send that out to the US, you really wonder, what's the purpose of you being in power there? Are you asking Donald Trump to help you with the crime? If he can, bring him, man. The people who need help there are the coloreds in the Cape Flat. That's where the serious gangsterism and some demonic powers are over that space, man. It seems like the Cape Flats are like Los Angeles by the Bloods gang, the Mexicans, MS-13. There's that vibe going on over there.
But then we have our four murders. And even though I said every single South African is a victim of crime, four murders are different. You do not have politicians actively calling for the murder of any other group within South Africa.
Let me tell you something. I haven't watched this whole video, so I didn't know that Willem would say, yes, crime affects everyone. However, I didn't know he would say that. I just know it from the common rhetoric that you get used to listening to. You know that they'll say, it's like, I've seen this as a debate tactic in the Christian versus Muslim debate. So when a Christian gives an argument for Christ and Christ's divinity, Muslims usually come in by saying, listen, Islam actually affirms Christ. We actually call him by our particular name, peace be upon him. And then thereafter, they go on to trash everything about Christ. They'll just say, we affirm him for the first 5 minutes, and then for the rest of the 85 minutes of the match, they just crash and trash Christianity. So Willem seems to have done what I remember him to be doing years ago, categorizing the crimes of white people in a very special bracket. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what exactly racism is called. Have you ever heard of gang murders? There's a lot of murder happening there. Are they called gang murders? Are they treated in any special way? People who are victims of gangsters in the Cape Flats, the crime capital that he's talking about. What is the crime coming upon the people there called? What is the crime coming upon the white people in the farmers called? That has a name. Guess what? The other just doesn't really have a name. It's violence due to gang related something, somebody caught in the crosshairs, a bullet ricocheted here and killed them. There's no special direct intervention being given, to eradicating that issue. And I wish you could try to do that if you could.
There's no politicians jesting or singing songs or even denying that Indians are being murdered or black people are being murdered or colored people are being murdered. Nobody calls for the slaughter of any other group. Nobody calls for the throats of any other group to be cut. The only group who are actively being incited.
Now listen, this is me being open a bit more to tell you how extreme I was. His speech is almost finished. Just want to give you something. As he says, those other crimes don't have a politician standing with a mic calling for the throats of certain people to be slit. He's talking about statements made by Julius. And cue the statements here.
The mayor of DA in PE is a white man. So these people, when you want to hit them hard, go after a white man. They feel a terrible pain because you have touched a white man. Not because Mashaba and Soli will not be touched. They will be touched, don't worry. But we are starting with this whiteness. We are cutting the throat of whiteness.
So, those statements there, he's talking about whiteness. He's talking about racism and white supremacy. And he's talking about I think it was a mayor at the time, Athol Trollip. He was talking about voting out the mayor in a no confidence motion. And he said that Athol Trollip has the arrogance of a white man who clearly knows that he's white and has a superior personality and attitude. And so Julius Malema said that they were going to be cutting the throat of whiteness, which he said to be his supremacist attitude. And Athol Trollip did fall. South Africans who followed this story and the journalists and the local media that followed this story properly interpreted and understood what was meant by that. And if AfriForum and the Willem Petzers were to go and play those statements in full, it would just show what those statements actually were. But my point to that is when Julius made those statements, I remember being such a radical member of the Economic Freedom Fighters. That statement there, we're cutting the throat of whiteness. Ikanga, fedile ka yona. That's what he was saying. The fedile ka yona means that is the end of that. You see, I had that as a ringtone. I downloaded the video, took out the MP3, and I had it as a ringtone. So I'd be in the bank and my phone would suddenly, Julius Malema, we're cutting the throat of whiteness. Ikanga, fedile ka yona. And people would be startled. That's something that I would not do today. You understand? Though I understood the context back then that he was just talking about white supremacy and a man in power, and that power needed to be removed. The overall connotation, the overall definition of cutting a throat of whiteness in the context of this violent country that we live in the context of people whose throats actually get cut, I would not have that ringtone today, and I would condemn those statements to be made further. However, to explain what it was, let's just stick to the original context of what it actually was. But I would say those statements are not to be made going further forward. They're problematic and they stir up, fearmongers on the other side like Willem Petzer, people who are invested in the Swart Gevaar. If you're South African, you might know what the Swart Gevaar is. The black fear, the fear of a black person. So at the end of apartheid, white people were all terrified that there was going to suddenly be a bum rush of black people coming in a swarm, attacking the suburbs and, taking up every corner. So that never happened, but that fear of the possibility of that happening has just constantly been maintained. And those who sing kill the Boer, shoot the farmer, cut the throats of whiteness are agitators who are agitating those on that other side as well. And I would like for there to be less agitation as long as we all agree to go down. However, if others are going down and being less agitating while others are on the rise, well, let's just then stick to what the Bible said. We are entering the end of days and these are the signs and nobody can do anything about it. Everybody's extreme now. Everybody is divided. You see, we are all polarized. Nobody's listening to anyone. The truth is hidden. Lies are the only prevalent thing and violence. So, man, it is what it is, Willem Petzer. Think for yourself. Think.
Violence towards them are white people. We had a member of parliament of the MKP, the Mkhonto weSizwe party, which is the opposition party in South Africa, actively calling for farm murders on his ex less than a week ago. We had politicians singing to a stadium of more than 60,000 people, kill the Boer, kill the farmer.
Shoot to kill! Come on, sir! Kill the poor! The farmer! Kill the poor! The farmer!
And all the people in that stadium, 60,000 at least, sing and dance along to the song. This is not merely a relic from the past struggle of the ANC. Today, this is full-on excitement against our people. We thank Donald Trump for the steps he is taking, and we just want to say to America and to the West, despite the foreign policy decisions the South African government had taken in the past 2 decades, the West does still have a friend here in South Africa.
And we are going with you, my friend, to China, towards communism over there. So I love the United States myself, man. I wish we didn't have to live in a world where there's a tug of war and people are all going different directions and we have to choose a block. But if things are the way that they are, man, we're going with you. We're going with you. I'd like to be a friend of the US myself. I'd like to immigrate there, but it seems like we're all going.
That, friends, being my people. And I just want to say to some of the organizations out there, we are not a cultural community. We are a people. We are an ethnic group. Ons is 'n volwaardige volk. So thank you everyone for coming. We had a petition that had been signed by over 138,000 people in support of this memorandum. So thank you for all of those people. And thank you for the roughly 3,000 people that came here today. We are very appreciative. We heard there were people sleeping on the streets the night before. Thank you for everyone that had been here. And we pray to God that this memorandum will make an impact in Washington. So with the support of the West, we can make South Africa great again.
Let's just send the video right there, man. He's pretty much delivered his powerful speech. And let me know what you think. If you don't have anything to say, I appreciate you watching. This is a difficult topic for a lot of us to speak on. This is a fringe group of people, and they themselves don't really represent a whole lot of the Afrikaner and white people in South Africa. And so a lot of people don't really want to be caught in this. They just want to listen. So I'm glad for you listening. Walk with me. Hope you subscribe. Hope you like the video. I'll see you next time.